So, Sean, could you start off by telling us a little bit about what you do? The only like description next to your name was like Globe Consumer Advocate.
Yeah, with a warm heart. I noticed that. I saw that.
There you go. Full blog with a warm heart.
Yeah. I've been with the Globe for 32 years, and my latest assignment is as a consumer advocacy columnist. And I write more or less one a week. There's different approaches you could take to consumer advocacy, and mine is to take tips from readers and choose one to essentially champion. And so someone has told me that, for instance, her airfare to where's she going to Beirut was not refunded to her even after a great deal of civil unrest broke out in Beirut, and she was going for a humanitarian reason. So I will champion her, and in that case, it's a story that's in the queue, as we say at the Globe. It's ready to be published. She did get her refund. She got a refund of, I think it was $2,600 after the Boston Globe, in the person of me, got involved. And that's a success for me. I've done this column for 3 years. I've done, I guess, over 100 different columns, different issues. One involved a person who adopted a cat, a very beautiful cat, as a matter of fact, I think with blue eyes. Do you know about this one? Oh, yeah. Okay. And she was a single person in a small condo in Salem. I forget the name of the cat. Do you remember? And she had taken it from a shelter. And the person who was running the shelter had very strict rules. You are not to take this cat outside, ever. Sign a contract, and it's $300. And so one day, a few months later, she's on the landing in her condo building. It's just more or less a triple-decker that's been converted into condos. And she's down at the bottom, and she's chatting with one of her neighbors, and it's a beautiful spring day, and her cat jumped out of her arms and went out onto the little patio. And she laid out and sunned herself, the cat, and so memory. I think it was Pamela took out her phone and did a little video of her cat sunning herself and put it on Facebook. What do you think happened next? The shelter saw it and demanded the cat back and eventually filed a lawsuit against her to get the cat back. And so she called me, and actually her friend was a person that worked at the Globe, Emma. She was a co-op for a long time. You probably remember her.
I remember
and so I get involved, and eventually the lawsuit is thrown out, and the cat remains with Pamela. That, out of the 100 columns I've done, that got more comments than any other. That was over 400, okay? It doesn't mean it was the most popular, but it was right up there. I got a call from a man, Bernie Wax, in Brookline. He was in his 70s, and he said, Sean, my wife and I wanted to celebrate our lives together, He said that his wife is in declining health. They're in their 70s. I think they brought up 4 children, and they even took a grandchild. Good, solid people. And they booked a cruise out of Long Beach, California, next to LA. And they get there, and Bernie puts his passport in one of his pieces of luggage, and in all the hustle and bustle, as you know, hundreds of people are waiting to board, a cart comes along and takes all the luggage. So Bernie gets to the desk finally, and the clerk, so to speak, said, passports? And Bernie said, well, no, it's in the luggage. Oh, all right, well, sit down here. And we have 3 hours before the ship sets sail. We'll see if we can we'll find it. 3 hours later, there's only 2 people left in this great cavernous building, just Bernie and his wife. And this clerk came and handed him one sheet of paper saying, we're not going to let you board without documentation. If you have any questions, call this number. And then the ship left with all the luggage. When they dialed the number, it was back in Miami, and it was actually Christmas weekend, and there was nobody there, for 3 or 4 days. They came back to Brookline, crestfallen, of course, and they called me, and I got involved, and it was Weejun Cruise Lines. And when I called them, the Weejun Cruise Line said, well, no, that's our policy. And in fact, they were wrong. They were going to go off the coast of Mexico. They could have boarded legally without a passport. A driver's license would have been enough. But they say that was their regulations. Norwegian Airlines says, well, there's nothing we can't do anything for you. They told me that. I write the story. People were outraged. This lovely little couple, literally left on the dock, missed the boat, out for their last cruise of their life, And it actually, that was on a Sunday, and I remember I was visiting my daughter in the South End, and I just kind of looked at my phone about 1 o'clock, and it was Norwegian saying they canceled. I mean, they're saying that they're going to give them, not only going to refund their money, which was, in my mind, fairly small money, $1,500. Not only were they going to do that, they're going to get the luggage back. They were going to compensate them for the clothes and personal items, medications that they needed while their luggage was away, and they promised them a luxury cruise anywhere they wanted to go in the VIP cabin, which they later did.
And that was after you published
Yeah, and that was only because of the Globe, and most importantly, the reaction of readers, posting comments. People were that one got 300 comments or so. It wasn't the cat, it wasn't as big as the cat, but it was right up there. These were human beings. People actually care about animals more than they do. It's a truism in journalism that if you write a dog or cat story, that it gets huge attention. In fact, isn't there a show out there, the case about effing cats or something?
Yeah. Don't F with the cat.
Yeah.
I watched it actually.
I looked at it and I got the gist of it and turned away. So it wasn't me that did this. It was the readers, is the way I like to think, because they were posting, this is the CEO, write a letter, I will never use this company before, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously the Norwegian saw that and scrambled to staunch the bleeding. And they rolled out this, this package that included a luxury trip to wherever they wanted to go. And when you think about the economics of it, it makes sense. Norwegian is getting beat up badly here, and for a couple of $1,000, call it, I don't know, $5,000, they can make it stop. That's cheap. Another story I did recently had to do with this. I'm going to say this very ordinary guy. it was appealing to me because he was a regular guy, a regular Joe is how we sometimes say it. And the thing that he loved more than anything else in his life, if you can believe it, is Neil Diamond. Do you know who Neil Diamond is, everybody? Who is he?
Sweet Caroline.
Yeah, Sweet Caroline.
Yeah, you go to Fenway, yeah.
Some people like that music. I don't disparage it, but I don't listen to it. Neil Diamond has Parkinson's disease. He's been touring for 50 years. He's now on his farewell tour 50 years later. My reader contacted me and said that he ordered a Neil Diamond plaque, for $100 or something with a picture, and he wanted to get it engraved for his daughter, who's 30 years old. And he said, when my daughter was an infant, she had asthma, and I had to spend a lot of time with her with a nebulizer over her mouth and nose. And all that time we listened to 1970s music, particularly Neil Diamond. And so he became they went to concerts together, everything. She just got married. He wanted this gift, he and his wife, for their daughter. So when I got that tip, I kind of liked it right away, knowing about the daughter and why they were doing it. And I wrote the story. The lead starts with the daughter as a child, listening to Neil Diamond, and it told the story. And the day it was published, an email popped up, and it says, Katie Diamond. It was from Katie Diamond, and she introduced herself as Neil Diamond's wife and manager, and she was outraged. Not at me.
Wait, so what happened? So the plaque got screwed up or something?
Yeah, it got screwed up. It never came. Sorry, I should. It was weeks and weeks and weeks. Don't ever hesitate to ask a question, because I will leave things out. We all leave things out. That's another skill for the reporter. Wait a minute, I don't quite understand that, and takes somebody back a little bit so that you then do get an understanding of it. Matt, perfect example. They ordered it in like August, and it just didn't come. And they did everything possibly that they could do to get it. Kate writes a note to me, and she's outraged, not at the Globe for writing this, but on behalf of this couple. And so she arranged not only to get the plaque, but then to send photographs signed and personalized. And my reader, the protagonist of this piece, wrote me an email saying, "Oh, I'm over the moon about this," and that, that's a nice feeling. I also saw a comment posted to the column saying, what was his name? John Lewis, I should call it. John Lewis should be reported to the Department of Families and Children for child abuse for subjecting that baby to Neil Diamond, all those, And the reader, the subject, he laughed about it, with me. Another one had to do with AirBNB. This couple from Boston, they were both doctors. They decided they had to get out of town. They went to LA. They got this like a little, what do they call them, a patio house in the back of a big place. And it was, a big bedroom. And they get settled in. And it's, it's a super host. And it had all good reviews and everything. And they left them a chilled bottle of wine, have a great time, you're here and everything. The next morning at about 4:30, bang, 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 bang on the door they hear, and the woman gets out and she said, "Who is it?" And it's sort of gibberish, is Alexander there? Is Alexander? There's a little Alexander. And so she decides that she's going to call the host, and does, without opening the door. And she hears the phone ringing on the other side. So it's the superhost himself. She said, "What are you doing here?" "Oh, life's too short for explanations," and he's gone. So they're perplexed, of course, and they spend that day. They go to Santa Monica or something, and they come back. They had a nice day, and finally they retire. They're in bed, sleeping. It's 2 o'clock, and there's a great big window here, and all of a sudden, bang! A person comes crashing through the window, and shards of glass go everywhere, and this guy's laying down. And the husband, the boyfriend, jumps up and subdues the guy and calls the police. And he gets out, and they get knives out of the kitchen. They call the LAPD. A helicopter comes out, and they finally get the guy, and they march him back. And it is the superhost, So this couple is completely freaked out, as you could imagine. And the column then sent it on AirBNB. Is it AirBNB? Yeah, AirBNB. They didn't want to give like a full refund. This happens a lot, I think. If you're an ordinary person, or if your luck is not good, if the expected route is to be treated badly, and given nothing. I think they put people on the contact level, the first people that answered calls. I think they encouraged them to, without saying it explicitly, you don't have to do much for these people. And they got nothing. And then so I got involved in the story and wrote it. And then they got a settlement. I don't know. Nobody disclosed to me what the value of the settlement was, either party. You know how settlements come? Both parties say, "Okay, you're owed something. We'll give you money, but here, you got to sign a release. You're not going to talk about this publicly anymore." And I wrote up, that it's been settled and everything, and recounted the gory details. And I think they probably got something like. Anybody want to guess what they got? $500,000. Yeah, you're dreaming. So this kid's going far, You're going to be a lawyer. Yeah, ask for a lot. Any other guesses?
$5,000?
My guess was 20, 25, something like that.
25,000?
Yeah, because they were in a very strong position. And Airbnb is a big, successful corporation. They need to make this go away. Also, both were doctors in status matters, in real life. And Airbnb would say, well, these people have access to resources, legal and otherwise. That was a big story. That got a lot of.
One quick note about Sean. This is just to show you what kind of reporter is. This goes back to the Chelsea Housing Authority. And Sean, another reporter, were writing about this crook who was running the Chelsea Housing Authority. And at one point, one of the stories the stories just stirred huge outrage at how bad this guy was. And there was a long string of comments after one of the stories. And one of the comments I've always remembered, it was very, very short, but all it said was, "This is why I buy the Globe." And I always thought that was a great comment. It really was. And that's, it's one of the reasons why we're reporters, why we want to go out there and report. We want to help people out, and exposing crooks is one of those things. And, helping people get their money back is another reason. So people sometimes don't realize how the power of reporting, we have a power. And if you use, to use it is a great, great thing. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
That's all right.
I was just going to ask, do you ever find out what was going on with that host?
Drugs and alcohol. And what were my ethical obligations when I was writing about him? What was his name? Jason or Jimmy or something? What do I have to do? I'm going to write about this.
Ask him for a quote?
Yeah, not really. I wouldn't put it that way. Thank you for the good answer. I would say you got to contact him. You got to try to contact him to get his side. And I called. I got a number because the two doctors had it, and I called. It's a cell. Hello. I said, "Hi, is this Jason?" "It depends." I said, this is Sean Murphy at the Boston Globe. And I try to give people a real meaningful opportunity. I don't, Sean Murphy at the Globe, you got anything? No, good, but, you know, none of that. I'm writing a piece. It's about Airbnb. It involves you, and you got the wrong number. Click, you know. And what would you do after that?
Try one more time.
Yeah, good, excellent. You got to try at least one more time. You know, see what happens. And what do you think is going to happen? Go to voicemail or whatever. But you got to feel like you've given them a good chance.
Questions for Sean? Other questions?
Two questions. One is, how do you pick what, because I'm sure people send you so many tips, and how do you pick which ones you're going to look into? And then second, have you ever
Hey, wait a minute, I can only handle one at a time here.
Okay.
Okay? All right. How many tips do you think I get a month? I counted them. Couple hundred. 50, who said 50?
I did.
Yeah, I think I'm at 50. I keep a spreadsheet. What company do you think I get the most complaints about?
Amazon.
That's a good one. So I get about 50 a month. Or I got in January, and there's still another day, I get 50. Another big one, if you want to think about categories, registry of motor vehicles, airlines, auto rental companies, appliances, you know, Frigidaire and Samsung, those kinds of things. The column kind of skews a little bit to the older person. I think because they may read it in print, and you know, and when we were teenagers and growing up, it was the press that you went to, you know, with any real complaint that you had. There was no social media. You know, you couldn't direct message anybody. Sorting through the tips for the one that works is, you know, really important, because you don't want to get out there and find out that you got a dud. It's not there, and that does happen. In fact, recently, you know, some people say, you know, some people think, well, Sean, you're working on this story now, and you've invested time, and I know how it works. That means that you've got to come back with a story, and there is some truth to that. But I have and continue to say, at some point, can't do it. It's not there. There's a contradiction. There's a credibility issue with the source. And I will, you know, pull the plug on it and go to something else. So I'm looking for stories that are compelling, is one way to put it. That would, you know, we used to call it, you know, the Hey Martha. Actually, it was Mike Grunwald that came up with this. The Hey Martha factor. This is going back 20 years ago. It's how another reporter formulated what compelling is. Compelling is when somebody's reading the newspaper and they read a paragraph in your story and they fold the paper down halfway and say, "Hey Martha, you got to see this," you know. So you're looking for compelling, you know, and you know, the guy come crashing through the window is compelling. Older, lovely couple left on the dock is compelling, recognizable. Not getting your Neil Diamond plaque, you know, not so much. You know, I had to work a little bit more with the characters involved. Application to people is a factor. Will readers? I want readers expect out of me to be transported in a little way, that is, taken out of their ordinary existence for this moment to read, you're sitting on the red line or green line or whatever, or home. But they also like to take something that they can use out of this too, you know. And my biggest comment to people is document, 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 document everything. You know, emails. Jot a written note with a date on it. That later can be compelling. You say, look, this is what somebody said to me on this date. And, you know, it's not certified. It's not time-stamped by, you know, sending it as an email, but it's still persuasive. The other thing is just do that as an email. If you take some notes, now you can send them to yourself, and it is dated. So that's how I do it. Sometimes there is a persistent factor that comes to play. And that is when somebody's written to me and, you know, I strive to respond to everybody. Sometimes I say, I'm sorry, but I think I'm going to take a pass on this. Sorry to disappoint you. And I'm surprised how quickly back I receive an email back saying what?
Why? Are they asking like why, or like they're being mean?
Thanks for reading.
I'm surprised. More often than not, it's thanks for responding. So I have that one. I have another one that says, let me give it some consideration. I have one that says, write me a chronology. That's what I want. Date and event. Date and event. I contacted AirBNB on this date. They said that 2 days passed. This happened. You know, that's what I want. And some people never respond to that. Another one is for me to say, are you available to talk right now by phone? And now I got the original tip, which is usually 2 or 3 paragraphs, or, you know, somewhat substantive. And I'm calling and I'm talking to this person, and my method is to ask questions that if the answer is yes, it disqualifies it as a column. Why would I do that? So I'm asking the questions that if I don't get the right answer, the column won't be done.
Because if they can't back up their story to you, they can't back it up in like a story.
Right, and I want to get rid of them quickly and move on to something else that'll work. So you know, that's a technique. And then there is a persistent factor where somebody has written to me and I've kind of, I won't say brush them off, but I have been, you know, I've responded but not fully. But they keep writing to me, keep writing to me, keep writing. And finally I say, well, maybe, you know, the moment comes when I'm desperate. You know, it's all about me. You know, and it is. As a journalist, in a way, it's always about you. People say, well, why are you writing this story? Oh, it's a public service and everything. No, I'm getting paid for this. And I want to work quickly and efficiently without a lot of hassle. And that has a weird way, that self-interest. You know, I want my name on the front page. I want my name out there. I want that gratification. And that makes me strive to get the story and jump through hoops and everything. You know, I suppose it goes awry occasionally when people start making things up. They want their name out there so much that and it happens. It happens periodically with some national reporter. We had a reporter, Jason Blair, for the New York Times. He later went to the New York Times and imploded.
He was an intern at the Globe, yeah.
So it's a weird thing with the self-interest of an individual journalist packaged with other journalists creates this really public service model, you know, known as the press. So the second half of your question?
Oh, yeah. Just out of curiosity, Have you ever?
You know, when you say it like that, I'm gonna have to gird myself.
Have you ever like called the company or whatever that you're
Dealing
telling
with,
the
yeah.
story on? Have they ever known who you were when you called?
Well, the way I write, and I do it all in email now. You know, you can call people. You know, if it's American Airlines or something, you go to their website and you got to look around. And finally, you usually get down the bottom a tab that says Newsroom, and then you click there, and eventually you'll see a media contact. They don't make it easy to find, and it's not, but you can get it, and it's not that bad. And so I tee up an email, and I have a thing where I like to send to two people, because that way they can't say, "Oh, I never got it," or you know, or he was on vacation, or she was away from her desk, or something, and they tend to hold each other responsible too. Oh, we got this guy from the Globe, you know. So I like the dynamic with two people on an email. Hello, my name is Sean Murphy. I am a Boston Globe consumer advocacy column. The link below will take you to recently published columns. I would appreciate your attention to this matter, and I would appreciate acknowledgement of receipt of this email. You know, and more than you would expect, more than I would expect, write back and say, all right, I got it. And then I'm in the habit of, you know, putting real information into that email so that they know what they're dealing with. You know, the most explosive charge, if you will, goes into that email. Because, again, for efficiency, if they come back and they say, well, no, that's not true because of X, I want to know that as soon as I possibly can so I can, again, drop it and go on to something else. You know, they respond. If I call Eversource or National Grid or Harvard Vanguard in Boston, you know, these people know me. And, you know, they respond. Other people sometimes call me and tell me or email me and say, oh, I was in a dispute with Eversource, and I invoked your name, and then they gave me what I wanted. And I'm sort of saying, wait a minute, how do I benefit out of that? You know? Remember, it's all about me, and I don't get, you know, and sometimes I actually consider putting a little something at the end, like a postscript saying, such and such a consumer, and I may do it eventually, you know, said that they got what they wanted from invoking my name. Why, you know, I guess that's encouraging other readers to do the same, and then that will get me more readers, is one way to put it. Yep. And a lot of times I'll get emails from people that, you know, I did this about this Samsung refrigerator that tried to get help, and they just blew her off, and, you know, it was under warranty, and some of these people sometimes are really desperate, usually, you know, and it's not about the money entirely. A lot of people are motivated for, I want to be heard. I want some justice here. You know, I want a principle involved here. And then I'll get a bunch of tips about Samsung, you know, how terrible they are, which is a little bit frustrating to me because I can't then write about another Samsung refrigerator. Readers don't want it. They want, or my editor certainly doesn't want it. She wants me to go on to something else, something else. You're welcome. Okay.
What inspired you to start this column? Like, were you having like consumer issues of your own and like realized?
No, yes and no. I mean, I'm kind of a, you might say, fussy guy, you know, in my personal life. I like to have everything just so, and you know, I don't like to be ripped off, and it's always loved sort of order. You know, you look something up and you find out what the rules are, and that's what it should be. And I like to find out information and, you know, apply it. So it seemed like this might be the thing to do. And when it started, I didn't know if it would be first person or it would be topical, saying, all right, Sean, do a piece on, what would we do today? We'd do something on coronavirus, the urgent care, how is it affecting consumers, or you do something on, Lyft and, sexual assault and Uber. That's an issue that's out there today. I'm not doing that. The way it has unfolded, and I didn't plan it this way, people call me, I marry that person, and I spend, and I meet them all in person, because I can judge credibility a little bit better that way. I think I can coax out better information. I can get a feel. I might start liking the person, and that would help me write the story because, I'm more motivated. I meet with everybody, and it did come out first person, but the way my mother likes it is that I introduce myself sort of 3/4 into the story. And I've said, I did this, I did that, I think this. And rather than, a political column might be right from the beginning, first person. Does that help?
Could you tell us about, you just mentioned you get a better sense of credibility when you meet the person. So obviously sometimes the consumer might be exaggerating a little bit just to get their case heard. How do you judge that, and can you tell us also about instances where you've have seen instances?
You're looking for contradictions. You said this, but I found that. That doesn't make sense. I don't get a lot of those. I really don't, because I think a person, by the time they're writing to me, it takes a little trouble, and they're willing to be public, and we get photographs of everybody that we write about. They understand that. But I did have a person told me about, being badly treated by an airline, and I thought it was great. And I went out and I met her in Somerville, and I'm sitting there talking to her. And as I'm listening more and more carefully, I'm realizing she's making stuff up. So at the next pause, I said, you know what? I think I gotta go. Excuse me. It was nice meeting you. She was there with her husband too, and I'll see you later. I didn't, beat her over the head or anything, and wouldn't. Other.
Could you just tell us about your, career as a journalist?
In a way, I want to say, who cares? My father was a journalist, and I started as a teenager, and I could do it. I wasn't a natural. I was not gifted. Am not gifted. This is something that you want to listen to carefully. But I was exposed to it, and that meant I had opportunity, and I could work hard, and I did work hard, and I applied myself. And guess what? They paid me to write. Really, in those early years, the biggest motivation was just to make a living. And I built up momentum, and I was always a careful reporter. I was a meticulous. I was, and I was always willing to say, well, wait a minute, that's not right. That shouldn't be. I started as a copy boy and a cub reporter at the Boston Globe through the offices of my father, And, at some point I thought I was it, but I wasn't. And I wound up at a small newspaper, the Gloucester Daily Times in Gloucester, Massachusetts. And that's where I really learned to be a reporter. And, I just, writing, and the big thing that came to me is, you know what? If I see something in the community that I don't think is right, I can actually go out and investigate it. I don't need to be certified. I don't need to be deputized. I don't need anything. I can just do it. And I got my facts right. The newspaper will put it on the front page. And they did. And I worked like that, doing stories like that, and the Globe noticed, and they hired me in '87. I was a cop reporter, a street reporter, a general assignment reporter, a court reporter, an investigative reporter. I was an editor. That's what happens. And now I'm doing this column, and mostly the column's satisfying. The first couple of years, it was great. You know, I felt wonderful. The first person was a good way to write. I mean, it was a way of more efficient. I could tell the story. I didn't have to put this sort of mock objectivity. But I have to say, and this is a truism I think about life, is now I'm nearing the end of the third year, and I need to be revived. Actually, this class is kind of helpful in that respect, you know. So I'm going to walk out of here, and I'm going to say, well, that was kind of cool. I like that. I like those students. They had good questions, you know. They were good. And you know what? You do have a good job, and it's interesting, and you should keep doing it, you know. So I have to thank you. Couple more?
Do you ever do what you do, like, not for your column? Like, I'm assuming that people in your life, once they know that you can, like, help them if they ever get ripped off or if they're dealing with some sort of consumer issue, like, if, like, a family member or friend came to you, like, do you ever help them, but not for your column? Obviously?
Not really. I can't think of any instance, but in any case, it's all the same, you know. Be careful, document, be persistent. And do not lose your temper on the phone. I have done it. You're surprised, right? Not on the job, although I did once on the job. I mean, it was more, you know this company, National Direct Floors? Yeah. They advertise a lot. Yeah. They are a total ripoff. And they wouldn't return a deposit from a couple, about $1,000. And they were saying it was because they got the letter late, and there's this so-called mailbox letter. If you got a 3-day window to get it, it's only putting it in the mailbox. It doesn't matter when they get it. So they were ripping them off. And I'd call, and they were, and I did use the F word. But I did it in like a jocular way. I thought I was on the phone with somebody who was it was a woman, would be kind of jocular with me, you know, yeah. And I said, wow, geez, you know. This couple, you know, they think they've been left out in fucking nowhere or something. And I caught myself after that and, you know, took myself to task a little bit. You should never do that. You know, no matter how it was intended, it could be used against you. So, never lose your temper, document, be persistent. One last question?
I had two, so.
You have two?
Can I ask you both and then you decide which one you want to answer?
Okay.
Right, so one of them was related to the job specifically. I was just curious, how often do you have to dive into the law side of it? Or is it fairly easy to email companies and they reciprocate easily? Or do you need to really look at the contracts and be like, oh no, there is something wrong going on here? No,
one of the biggest things about being a lawyer, it helps a lot as a journalist because it demystifies the law. You know, some people look at, oh, it's a legal issue, I gotta run away. I don't have to do that. I know what a contract is. You know what a contract is. A contract is an exchange of promises. You do this, and I will do that. And all the ones I deal with are written. A warranty, you can look it up and you can read it. I'm doing something now, has to do with a neighborhood and school being built and houses being shaken and damaged. And I call a lawyer friend and he gives me another friend who's a does contract law. And together we look up, chapter 185, section 20C. And it says if blasting, strict any damage has to be compensated. That's called strict liability. I mean, that helps. I've heard that before. I know the concept. And I'm not afraid. And
the other question.
The other?
Was related to the cat story. Didn't you find it weird that the cat wasn't allowed outside? Or did I misunderstand the story?
No, you did. And I did find it weird. But I went, there's this thing called the internet. I Googled cats outside, and you get these long, you get legitimate organizations, what is it, the Society to Prevent Cruelty to Animals. They recommend don't let your cat out. They're going to get hit by a car, they're going to get a disease, they're going to get eaten up.
Well, they'll kill all the birds and stuff like that.
They don't care about that. So, and so you get, that's another period when, there's the contact period, there's the evaluation of the tip period, there's the interview with the protagonist period. Another one is just on the internet, kind of grazing, cruising around, seeing what you find. And it's pretty easy, and it informs your column when you write it. Maybe not necessarily directly, but it informs it. It's there somewhere. And in fact, about the cats outside, I put a couple of, clauses in about that so people would understand.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That was great.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was awesome.
Thank you very much.